Hey folks, what's up? Thanks for checking out I Suck at Painting. In today's video we are going to use Oyumaru to make some bases. Okay, so we are going to use Oyumaru to make bases. You can use this for really anything else if you just need to make more copies of a piece that you have. In this case, I'm going to be making some stuff to do bases. So what is Oyumaru? Oyumaru is Japanese thermoplastic. What this does is it starts out this solid, kind of flexible kind of stuff, and when it gets hot, it gets soft. You then use it to make a mold of whatever object you want to have copies of, and when it cools off, it gets hard. So what we're going to need for this obviously is Oyumaru. I have a bunch of different packs. I got a bunch last time I went to Japan, and these are, I have some more, but these are and what we're going to use today. And I'm going to cast some wheels, and I'm going to cast this section of this piece of the squig buggy. You can use this to make two-part molds where you have your Oyumaru, you put your piece in, you let that cool off, and you take another piece of Oyumaru and put it on top, let that cool, take it apart, and you have a two-piece mold where you could do, you know, a full both sides of any piece you wanted. I'm only doing one part molds for this because I don't need the backs of stuff, because this is just going to go down on bases. So the way we do this is we put this into hot water. I will get some hot water and we will go from there. Okay, I have some water. So what we need to do to get this ready is, well, I don't think this is necessary, but I cut these down into a little bit smaller pieces. Thirds should be fine. And you want your water to be at least 80 degrees Celsius. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, 170 something. It can be hotter, but it has to be at least 80 Celsius. And the process is actually very, very simple. We just put it in the water and we're going to let it sit. It takes about 3 minutes to get soft. Then we're going to take it out and do our molds. So I have our water here, and we just put it in. I'm going to kind of try to keep them together. It doesn't really matter, but just for the hell of it. Okay, so we're going to let these sit about 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, and we'll be ready to take them out and start our mold. So I'll be back in 3 minutes. Okay, so we've been pretty much 3 minutes. What we want to do now is to just get a piece of paper towel and get out the Oyumaru. And at this point it is soft. It's also hot. So we're going to just dry it off a little bit. And we can pull a chunk off. What I recommend is, if you're going to spend a bit of time, because it does cool off pretty quickly, take the chunk that you're going to use off and put the rest back in and let it soak in the water. So you do want this to be kind of thick on here. You don't want to have your mold be super thin. I'm just going to use this piece because I want this little bit here for a base. So this is super easy. All we do is just press it in. That's all there is to it. for a 1-part mold. Just make sure it's all pushed in, and yeah, I mean that's basically it. The only thing that's going to be a little bit different is on these wheels. I do want to also cast these wheels because this center part is recessed pretty deeply. I'm going to do this in 2 parts. So like I said, I'm going to take off one piece that I'm going to use first, and I'm going to set the other piece back in here. So we're going to take off our first piece. And this is for the center here. Now what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to stick it in here, and basically I'm just going to jam it. Well, jam it down in, make sure it gets down all the way into all those deep recesses. Alright, so now that's done. Make sure this is dry. And we'll take our remaining piece, dry that off. Get a chunk. Actually, let's just use the whole thing. What the hell? And we're going to push this all the way around the outside. Just make sure it gets into all the recesses so that you have all your details. And again, like I said, you don't want it to be super thin around the outsides. And that should be fine. You can see how thick that is. Now it seems like an awful lot of material to use just to cast one thing, but one of the great things about this is you can reuse it. Once it hardens, it holds its shape until you put it back in the water. And once it gets warm again, it'll soften up again, and you can use it to make any other things that you want to cast. Alright, so I'm gonna do the rest of these real quick. I'll come back, and then what we're gonna do is we're going to fill our mold. Well, we'll take the piece out, then we'll fill the mold, and I'm going to try 3 different things. I'm going to do an experiment. I'm going to try 3 different materials to cast the pieces that we're going to use. Okay, so I'll be back when this is finished. It is now about 15 minutes later. This stuff only takes about 10 minutes to get fully hard, so it is quite fast. Now to do this next part is very easy. We just need to take these pieces out. So you basically just kind of peel the stuff back, and your piece should pop right out, just like that. Easy. Okay. So now you can see we have an impression of our original piece. And we'll do the same for these. Just kind of open it up a little bit. This one's probably going to be a little tougher because of the deep recesses, but you can kind of push on the bottom and push it out. And there we go. And our next one is exactly the same. Just going to push on the bottom, pop this out. And pull this guy out. Alright, and so now we have 3 molds. And we're going to use different materials for this. I'm going to use Tamiya putty, quick type, which I actually already started. Got that drying because this that much of it I think is going to take a while to dry, so I got that one started. We're also going to use the Tamiya 2-part epoxy, the white milliput, and I'm going to get those mixed up and we will start filling. Alright, first up we have the white, I believe this is called the fine, super fine milliput. To be completely honest, I'm not a huge fan of milliput, but I have some, so we're going to try it. Now this is also quite easy. We're just going to put this in and we're going to jam it down. I'm going to wet my tool so it doesn't stick. And then I'm just going to kind of dig in and push it towards the outside just to make sure that we're all the way into all those details. Then I'm pretty much just going to kind of get the top to just an even level. It doesn't have to be perfect, because this side will be the side that's going face down on the base. So once we get this out, we're going to sand this whole surface off anyway, so it doesn't really matter what this looks like. Alright, so that's our milliput. We have that done, and the Tamiya putty. I probably wouldn't really recommend using the Tamiya putty. It just seems like it would be an awful expensive bit to cast. But I'm going to get the Tamiya two-part epoxy ready, and we'll fill this next tube. Alright, the Tamiya is ready, and we're going to do basically exactly the same thing we did with the milliput. The difference being is we're also going to do this piece here. So I'm going to just take a bit off, and we're going to smash this onto here. And push it down so it gets into all the details. I'll wet my fingers a little bit. And this is going to be a pretty messy cast as far as like flash and all that, but like I said, this is for bases, so it's not really that important. We can just cut that off when it's done. And then again for the wheel, we're going to do basically the same thing. Put it in here, and wet my finger. I'm going to push it into the sides first. Make sure that everything gets some putting into it. Now I'm just going to level that off. Sorry for the runny nose, it's super hot, humid. Now we wait. This is going to take about 6 hours, at least for this to go. I'm not sure about the milliput, I'll check. But it's about 6 hours on the Tamiya stuff, and I'll check on the milliput, and I will come back after I eat and do some other stuff. It is now much later. All of this stuff is totally dry. So let's crack it out and see what it looks like. First we have our little piece of the roll bar, the Wreck Truck Squig Buggy. And all you do is just kind of pull this back, and it should pop right off. There we go. As you can see, we got a pretty nice piece. It's all solid. So if, when I want to use this for a base, I'll have to cut this stuff out, clean it up. That's no big deal. And let's take a look at our other three things here. This is the Tamiya putty, that's the modeling putty in the tube. This is the milliput, extra fine, and this is the Tamiya two-part epoxy putty. So let's take them out and see what they look like. And again, this is the same. I don't know if this is going to hold up, this stuff. But we're just going to push on the bottom and pop it out. And it should come right out. And there we go. And that looks like it came out decent. There's a little gap there that didn't fill in. Well, that's not too bad. And the milliput one, I'm just pushing on the bottom here, trying to dislodge it. This one's pretty tough. There we go. That one came out decent enough. I mean, again, these are all for bases, so if it's not perfect, it doesn't really matter, because what we're going to do is cut this down and put it on the base. Now the Tamiya one, came out pretty well also. Now we can reuse these again. They're all ready to go. Or if we want to do something else, we can just throw them back into the hot water and use them for something else. So what we're going to do with these is we're going to cut them down. Which one we use, I guess, doesn't really matter too much. We'll use this one. Again, because this is bases, it doesn't really matter if the details aren't all perfect, because obviously we're going to, put dirt and stuff like that on top of it. And if it looks a little bit beat up, that's actually kind of cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this down at some kind of an angle so that it'll sit like that in the base, kind of one end sticking up and one end sunk down into the soil, or whatever you want to call it. To do this cutting, I'm going to use this little fine blade, little hacksaw thing, and we're just going to find a good angle that we like and start cutting. Be careful, mind your fingers, of course. So this is the first thing we're going to do. I'll go ahead and cut all this through and we'll go on to the next step. Alright, I got that piece cut off and I went ahead and cleaned up some of the flesh on here. I didn't do all of it because it's not really important right now. What is important is the bottom. It won't be totally straight cutting something that thick with the hacksaw. So what we're going to do is we're going to use some heavy grit sandpaper and we're going to smooth out the bottom of this. And this is pretty self-explanatory. We're just making the bottom smooth. I think for the demonstration base, I'll go ahead and use one of these wheels. And by the way, these wheels are from the last video about adding damage and wear to wheels for 40K vehicles, and you can check that video out up there. So just keep going around with this, and then once it's fairly level, we can go ahead and put it on the base. And that's almost there. So I'll keep going with this, and when we come back, I will have glued this onto the base. I will have painted the base, and before I show it to you, I want to say, if you like this kind of stuff, hit that like button, subscribe button, especially the bell button. The demon spawn button, that works too. And I will come back and show you the finished product in just a second. Base is complete and it looks pretty good. Now this was just a wheel that I'm using for a different model, but I wanted to use it to make a base. So I made a copy. So if you see a cool piece and you're like, oh, that would be sweet on a base, just grab some Oyamaru, make a copy, slap it on there. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.